What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks, and in today's video, dude, we're coming off of probably, I'd say, the biggest upset in terms of just understanding the context of the situation. The Knicks were playing without Jalen Brunson, at at TD Bank, in Boston, hostile environment, playoff environment. The Knicks were up double digits in the fourth quarter. They blow that lead. The Celtics soar back. They surge back into the game. They looked like they were going to kind of take over at that point. The Knicks, Emmanuel quickly had been playing, 40 plus minutes at that point. Randall was probably getting tired. And they still pulled it off. The Knicks pulled off a double overtime win over the Boston Celtics without Jalen Brunson. That's a huge win. They go 4-0 in that week. They played Boston twice. They played Miami. They played Brooklyn, and they swept it. So, there is a lot to talk about, I think, with that game. There is a big game. There's a big West Coast trip coming up, but we're not going to overlook the Charlotte game. We'll talk about that as well. But before we get into everything, Dylan, how are you doing today, my friend? I imagine you're flying high after that win.
Oh no, I'm doing great. That Celtics win was amazing. You can't really do anything better with that. You came back down huge. You were already shorthanded without Brunson and quickly just had the game of his life, really. 38 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, something like that. He almost put up a 40-point triple-double in a spot start. How can you not love that? And he's already been phenomenal as a sixth man this year. Now he's the betting favorite to win sixth man of the year, and rightfully so because he's been just phenomenal. And 4-0 in that week with 2 Boston games, a Nets game, and a Heat game. That's amazing. You literally couldn't have done that any better. I think you had a great balance of 2 statement blowout wins and then 2 heartbreakers. You handed a heartbreaker to Miami and then you crushed Boston in double overtime. You basically won in any way you could, and they did it. They just did phenomenal. They've won 9 straight games. They have a Charlotte game tonight. You don't want to overlook Charlotte. It's still an NBA team, but they're definitely a much weaker opponent compared to who we've been playing lately. And we look like we're in prime position to go for 10 straight wins. And we're playing at home tonight, so that's also a huge thing. We've been winning games at home now lately. So, everything's going right for us. Now, teams like all media members and stuff are looking at us like, we're a legit team. We're a legit contender now. I saw NBA.com has us ranked 5th in the power rankings. CBS had us ranked number 1, which, which is still a wild thing to be. But I think that just kind of shows just how much has changed over the course of the past few weeks and how much more serious they're taking us. Maybe some things are being blown out of proportion, maybe not. But regardless, it's been an enjoyable winning streak right now. It's been an enjoyable stretch. We've seen a bunch of great play from pretty much everybody. Everything is clicking. Everyone's playing well. You really can't write this any better for them. They've just been doing everything perfectly. And you got to give credit to not only the players, but to even Tom Thibodeau too. Thibodeau made that that rotation change back in early December, and it's worked perfectly. We have the second best record in the NBA in that span. I think we're 29-14. That's on pace for well over 55 wins. Everything's been going good, and you gotta tip your cap to Tom Thibodeau for that. I know Knicks fans are not, I know he's not the most popular guy amongst Knicks fans, but he has done much better this year compared to last year in terms of his coaching. His rotations look better. He's trying things new if something isn't working. Obviously he's not perfect. I think everyone can agree with that. Not a perfect coach, but so far what he has done has definitely been a step in the right direction. It gives me hope that maybe in the playoffs we can make some serious noise, do some good things in the playoffs, whether it's something with the rotation or something with the schemes, anything like that. But point is, this run has been very encouraging. It's been definitely encouraging for me to see because, I always, in the beginning of the season, I was like, okay, they're going to be a play-in team. I don't think they're going to get very far. If they make the playoffs, they won't get past first round. Right now, I'm expecting to get past first round. Maybe my expectations are a little high, but I'm expecting a first round win and maybe a second round win. But, second round exit seems a little more realistic. But my expectations are definitely up now. I think a lot of people around the leagues, their expectations about the Knicks are up. And just to wrap up the point real fast, everything about the Knicks is trending upwards, and you love to see it right now at a time like this. Right now, it's just they're thriving, they're doing everything right, and you love to see it.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, you've hit every single point that I think is important for a lot of people to hear. Number one, everyone is clicking now. I feel like RJ Barrett's played better, since the All Star break, and I think that's something that we'll definitely get into. You mentioned Emmanuel Quickly spot start. Emmanuel Quickly, I think getting a chance to be on the national stage and have a performance like that was what he needed, right? Not because we didn't know he was that good, not because we had reservations or question marks about whether Emmanuel Quickly was a very good basketball player or not, because everyone outside of New York, everyone that isn't a Knicks fan, everyone that is like, oh, I wonder how the Emmanuel Quickly is this year, or, I wonder why we're hearing six man of the year buzz. As you mentioned with the odds, they reflect it. He was what, plus 3,000 at one point last week, and now he's all the way up to the favorite. There's a reason for that, because Emmanuel Quickly showed that that was his showing out party, and ability, the chance to show to everyone, this dude's legit. He's a really good NBA player. I view Emmanuel Quickly as this team's third best player, right? You have Jalen Brunson, you have Julius Randle, 1A, 1B type situation. Put him however you want to put him. But Emmanuel Quickly is this team's third best player this year. He's played to a phenomenal, he's played at a phenomenal level. He's played at a phenomenal rate. This is the most efficient he's been in his career, with a 57.7% true shooting percentage. It's right around league average, which is something that you typically see smaller guards struggle with. And he's averaging over 13 points a game, as you mentioned, whether it's as a starter, whether it's off the bench, whatever role the Knicks have needed Emmanuel Quickly to play, Emmanuel Quickly has played it, and he's played at a very high level. And as it's the term we've been using from his glue guy, everyone just gets better when they play with Emmanuel Quickly. The team plays better with Emmanuel Quickly. A couple of key stats here that I think are fun to look at. Obviously there's, I think that this one circulated around, I think around 2 weeks ago, where he's like fourth in defensive field goal percentage. He's top 10 in defensive rating, right? I mean, you don't really see a lot of guards here. The one that stands out is Alex Caruso. But I mean, when you're talking about being a defensive guard on the level of an Alex Caruso, or even in the same conversation, we're talking about an elite level defensive guard here. The offense has been there. I think he's taken that next step this year into kind of marrying that offense we saw in the first year and the defensive progression we saw in the second year. And he's gotten better in both regards, but he's married these two aspects of his game together. And that was the difference. That is why this team, that is a huge reason why this team is the way it is right now. I have a friend, his name's Ethan. He's NY Sports Fan Kush on Twitter. He said this, and I think it's perfectly said. Jalen Brunson didn't play that night, and I think it was a good example to show a good way to show that this team isn't just Jalen Brunson was added onto the 2021 team. It's Jalen Brunson was added onto to this team, and the players that remained from that 2021 team either improved or maintained a high level of play, right? Whether it's Mitchell Robinson just continuing to be good, or Emmanuel Quickly taking a step forward, or Julius Randle taking a step forward. This team isn't just 2021 plus Jalen Brunson and a fluke run, and this team is just red hot. This is a team that was good in 2020, but just wasn't good enough. And 2021, they took a step back. And now in 2022, or this year, or 2023 now, now we have a team that has that same depth that the 2020 and 2021 teams had in terms of their bench scoring. But the starting lineup's better than it's ever been. And Emmanuel Quickly's been the perfect sixth man for this team. I'm so excited to continue to see him play. But kind of highlighting, some other guys who have performed well lately. I know Josh Hart's kind of gone a little quiet in the scoring department, but he's continued to play well. What do you think his impact on the bench unit, they went on that big run in the fourth quarter, excuse me. What role do you think how do you think his impact goes beyond just scoring?
Right. So, Josh Hart's obviously not been scoring a lot, like you mentioned, but he provides such an impact on the rebounding and the defense. I think that goes a long way because, when Mitchell Robinson's on the floor, for example, our rebounding is shot. We take a massive hit when he's not on the floor, and, we know he gets into foul trouble quite a bit. So that's when we need Josh Hart. I think we saw it in the Boston game quite a bit. We had a few instances where Randall was at the 5, and, Randall is not a traditional center, obviously. He's a power forward, but Randall is, he's 6'9", so they're going to try him out at the 5 here and there. But still, he's not, and even though Randall is getting a lot of rebounds, this season, it's a little tougher for him to match up with, big centers, especially guys like, Al Horford, who's a big guy, or on a traditional night, we would have Robert Williams at Boston, but he wasn't there the other night. But still, my point is, Randall's not the type of guy to match up with big centers. And that's where Josh Hart comes in because he could get those rebounds. He's active on the glass. He helps fight for rebounds. He gets those tips. Those little tips are a big thing because even just a simple tip or making rebound contested for them, not only helps you in transition defense if you don't get the rebound, but it also helps, if you do tip it in the right spot, you can get the rebound. Someone else on the Knicks might get the rebound, get you a second chance bucket. It goes a long way. It's the little things that make a big difference. And I think that's what Josh Hart provides. He's not a loud box score guy. I think we know that by now. He's had a couple big games like that, but I think we know traditionally he's not the type of guy to consistently give you like 25 a night. But he just gives you an impact. He gives you the impact you don't see on the box score. He gives you the impact on the rebounding, the fighting, the hustle. I think that's a big thing right there, the hustle. Like we don't I think that's a big difference too with this team than it was last year. The hustle, like they just seem to be trying much harder. Everything's like kicked up a notch. Like their effort level is like way higher. They're fighting hard for rebounds. They're trying to get good shots. They're fighting hard for buckets inside. They're doing everything they can to try to get points or get stops. Anything they can do, and they're hustling. They're playing hard. I think Josh Hart kind of leveled that a little bit. I think bringing in Jalen Brunson was the big thing with the hustle thing, but then Josh Hart kind of elevated that even more to like, just a team full of hustlers, gritty, grinding players that just go get it. They just go after it. And, like to wrap up my point, I think just that kind of impact that Hart provides is something that, we really shouldn't take for granted because we see it already. We're 9-0 with him. We haven't lost with him, and it's been about 3 weeks. I mean, it's a small sample size, of course, but like I've mentioned this a few times in our previous episodes, we've already seen enough of what he provides. We've seen enough. We've seen more than enough, really. And I think we need to as long as I expect him to continue to keep doing that, but you know, just everything he does, it fits well with our unit. He's a Tibbs guy, and it just, the play style works. Everything that he's been doing, it fits well with us. It fits well with our culture. It fits well perfectly. I think, it's a guy that we need to keep around for a while because, if he keeps performing like this, you've already seen, we're already people are talking about us being contenders. And it's only been 9 games with Josh Hart. Just in a 3-week swing, all of a sudden the narrative has changed from a fringe playoff team to a contender. So having Josh Hart for a full season could really get us to where we really, really want to be. Right now, 50 wins looks like a real possibility. It's going to be difficult. They're going to have to go I think 11-5 the rest of the way to get 50 wins, but that's not impossible by any means. And especially with the way this Knicks team is rolling, they definitely can do that. They've already won 9 straight, and I saw they have the 23rd hardest schedule left, so they just got through the toughest part of this final stretch, without losing. They went undefeated. I mean, that's everything. The Knicks are a team right now that we need to be talking about because they are someone that you don't want to face in the playoffs. If you're a different team right now and you're watching what the Knicks are doing, you're thinking okay, these guys are a lot better than we thought. We need to take these guys seriously. And I think Josh Hart coming in really put a stamp on that. Okay, we're a deep team, we're a hustle team, we play hard, we go for wins, we play until the final buzzer no matter what.
Yeah, dude, I think that's a perfect way to kind of encapsulate what Josh Hart has brought to this team. And I know you mentioned this in your first point with Tom Thibodeau, where I've been someone who's vocally critical of him. And as you mentioned, this team has a different energy to them. And if I'm going to attribute, when this team wasn't playing well to Tom Thibodeau, and I'm going to attribute, when this team looked lackadaisical, when this team looked, not cohesive as an offense to Tom Thibodeau, when this team does come together, I have to also attribute that to Tom Thibodeau, right? Josh Hart has mentioned he loves playing for Tibbs. He thinks he's mentioned before, even before, the Knicks were rumored to trade for him. I forget how long ago this was, but he mentioned that Tom Thibodeau, he felt like he plays a Tom Thibodeau's type of basketball and he would play for Tom Thibodeau if given the opportunity. This is a match made in heaven. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, guys like that, they really push the pace. As you mentioned, Josh Hart is someone who's going to fight for rebounds. He creates turnovers, which I think is a big thing too. This team defensively, in terms of defensive rating and defensive metrics, they're not bad. They're kind of around league average, a little bit better, right? But it feels like they've gotten better as the season's gone on. I feel like, getting Mitch back is obviously a big part of that. The acquisition of Josh Hart, things of that nature allow you to run out better defensive lineups. And quite frankly, it showed, right? They've been able to stave off some pretty tough offenses. And another thing too is I'm looking at, Josh Hart. I'm looking at Emmanuel quickly. I'm looking at, just the guys that are around Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. This team is really well built. This team is really well constructed. A lot of that, in my opinion, goes to Leon Rose. He's done an excellent job building this team to the way it is right now. We're at this point, we have plenty of picks, right? This team has a lot of picks. And I was looking at this, the Knicks top 3 highest salaries. So the 3 most expensive players on the Knicks roster, they're in the bottom third in the league in terms of the salaries of their trio, right? So that trio currently, I believe, is Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and Evan Fournier. That's incredible to me that you're in the bottom half, you're in the bottom third of the league in terms of how much money you're attributing to your 3 highest paid players. And they don't have one of the highest payrolls in the NBA, and they're still able to do this. They have flexibility. They'll have flexibility to potentially bring in another star player, bring in that number 1 option. You know what I mean? I don't know who that player is. I think that is something for the offseason. We are in right now. I'm focusing on the right now, but Leon Rose has done a great job putting this team together. Tom Thibodeau is this team's embraced his mentality. I think he's also improved in terms of, he's made adjustments. I don't think it's just like, the team just started playing better. Obviously, as a coach, you have to make adjustments in order for your team to go on a stretch like this. And you mentioned with the schedule. This was the part of the schedule that every Knicks fan was dreading. We're like, man, this is tough. This is like crap, like Boston, not Boston. Brooklyn probably doesn't have this tough of a schedule. Miami's not going to have to play this gauntlet of a week right now, and this could hurt us. And the Knicks swept that week. The Knicks swept it, right? Charlotte, as you mentioned, you can't overlook them. You've got to play them like you'd play any other NBA team, but you're going out west. And I think it's important to have built that cushion going out west. We've talked about this in the last episode when we were kind of hinting at this West Coast trip. It's tough to play out west when if you're an Eastern Conference team. Not that, it's not like you go out west and you're like scared or anything, but it's time changes. You're tired. You're fatigued. These guys are human. They're not robots. They feel things, right? So they got a tough road trip ahead. If they can, this is huge for not only their playoff odds, but for their chance at the 5th seed, holding potentially. You just need to get the 5th seed, really. 5th seed, and you really are putting yourself in a good position. As you mentioned, if they face off against the Cavs in the first round, my expectation is I want them to beat that team. I don't want to. I'm not going to be like, oh, we got swept. Well, we weren't supposed to be here. I'd be disappointed with that. I think we're at the point where I'd be disappointed if this team got embarrassed in the first round. If they lose in 7, it's a hard-fought series. It's going to break my heart. But I'm not going to be too upset. But if this team gets embarrassed in the first round, yeah, it'll be upsetting because this team set this standard. This team, we've seen how this team can play, right? Are they inconsistent at times? Sure. In the Boston game, did it, and the Miami game, were those the 2 prettiest wins in the world? No. Do I care? Absolutely not, because you're going to win. You're going to have to play dogfights like that. And the Knicks were losing dogfights like that. Prior to that game, they were 3-6 in overtime. 3-6. They were losing these dogfights. So it's a good sign to see them winning these things. These are at that point, you're a double overtime. That's a matter of your mental toughness, your ability to just pursue on. Mendo quickly didn't sit in the second half. He played 2 quarters and 2 overtimes, did not sit, and got better. That speaks to this team's toughness. So, and Jalen Brunson, I imagine the Knicks probably had to fight Jalen Brunson to sit out that game against Boston. I imagine he wasn't very happy about that. But I love that mentality from these guys, So looking at this West Coast trip, though, and again, don't want to overlook Charlotte, but Charlotte is tonight, and the West Coast trip is a little more of an extended thing, and we're not going to be able to record right after the Charlotte game. So I wanted to get your thoughts. What do you think is a reasonable expectation for this West Coast trip? What are some things you'd like to see? And who are some guys you'd like to see kind of get back into rhythm if you feel like they haven't been playing to their standard as of late?
Right. So, to just bring up the West Coast trip, I mean, I think it gets off to a start where you want to continue to make a statement because their first game on the West Coast trip is against Sacramento. Sacramento's been really good this year. They're one of the best offenses in the NBA. They've been great with pace. They kill you with pace. They kill you with threes. They can kill you. And I think it got bumped to national TV a couple weeks ago. So, the NBA clearly views that as an important game. And I think the Knicks should view that as an important game too, because it puts a stamp like, okay, we've beaten these teams in the East. Now we can handle you guys in the West, So, and, I think so if you get off to a good start there in Sacramento, it can set the tone for the rest of the trip. I think they have games against like Portland, and I think both LA teams. So, it could set the tone for that because Sacramento I like to compare Sacramento to the Knicks in a way because maybe the Knicks are a little better defensively, but offensively they're very similar, I think, because they both have 2 of the clutchest guys in the league. Sacramento has De'Aaron Fox, we have Jalen Brunson. They have 2 all-star. They each have an all-star big man. They had Domantas Sabonis, we had Julius Randle. We've always seen how those matchups go. Though Julius Randle usually gives him the work. I think we know that by now, but The offensive, though, I think it's similar in a way because they look to score in the perimeter a lot, but they also try to get inside at times, and they try to go to the inside with their star players. And I think, like, so looking at that, it's a good matchup right there. I think that's a great matchup, really. It should be a competitive game when we get to Sacramento, but that's obviously 2 games from now. We still got Charlotte tonight, but looking overall at the West Coast trip, I think they can take advantage of that and try to put a further statement, a bigger statement in bolder letters, like we are good, we are really good. Stop sleeping on us. We are good. We're gonna make a run, and we're gonna make a run. So change the narrative about us because we're here. We're a good team, and if they can get off to a good start in the West Coast trip with Sacramento, again that sets a tone. I think just a good West Coast trip overall will really like set the tone overall for the finish of the season because then they come back home and they have some games on the East Coast. I think they have a game against Cleveland at the very end of the season, and then like in the beginning of April they have a couple like closeout games against like the Pelicans, the Pacers, and the Wizards. Some just closeout games. So you want to get through this part of the schedule right here because this really is like the final stretch, really right here. This West Coast trip. This is basically where we'll determine where they're going to finish, right? So if they can get a good trip, we could maybe look at 4 seed, but likely we might end up as a 5th seed. Cavaliers had a huge win last night against Boston. Grant Williams missed both those free throws at the end of regulation. It completely took any momentum away from Boston. You kind of knew Boston was going to end up losing in overtime because that's a tough one to swallow. So seeing that, you probably think Cleveland's going to get the 4th seed. That was a huge win for them, really, because like I know that Cleveland doesn't have like a crazy tough schedule the rest of the way. So Cleveland getting that win kind of like I wouldn't say solidified 4th seed for them because anything could happen down this final stretch, and we still have another game against them, so anything can change. But I think that's a big momentum swing. I think it's also like it hurts for the Knicks a little bit because they're probably seeing that. Because if the Cavs lost that game, we would have had the 4th seed tonight. If we were to win, we would have been in prime position to take it. But with the Cavs winning, we can't do that. That's probably like a little bit of a gut punch to the Knicks a little bit. Like we could have had a chance. It was right there, but now we got to keep fighting. And hopefully the mentality is that they keep fighting because it seems like right now that is their mentality. Just keep on winning, keep your foot on the gas, don't slow down. But looking ahead, let's just hope for a good West Coast trip like we've been talking about. That's a big thing. It's going to be interesting to see because, like you said, time zone change. It's just a lot different being in the West Coast compared to the East Coast and New York. So we'll see how the West Coast goes. I'm hoping it goes well. I'm pretty sure you are too. I know the Knicks are looking at it as like a big trip. I'm sure they're looking at it that way. And like you said, they're gonna try to have all their guys play as much as they can. Like you said, Jalen Brunson probably was fighting to be able to play against Boston, and they told him no. It was probably the smart decision at the end of the day. And I mean, in hindsight, it didn't hurt us. We ended up winning, so that was big. Winning without Brunson was a huge thing. It kind of showcased our depth a little bit, I thought. But you know, if we can have our guys on the stretch and have a good West Coast trip, I'm anticipating a good finish. I'm anticipating a thrilling finish because maybe it may go down to the last game for all we know if that's 4th spot, which obviously makes a huge difference between who gets home court and who doesn't. And so, I want us to get home court. I know we play better on the road, ironically, but in the playoffs, it's a different environment. It's a different scheme. I think you need to get the home court in the playoffs, especially with MSG and how rowdy those fans can be and how loud they are and how they always show out. You want to be able to get those games at MSG, especially in the playoffs. I mean, that's just what you want. So, yeah, looking ahead, let's just get a good West Coast trip, finish out strong, and see where it takes us. Let's hope for a good spot. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree in the sense that like, at this point you're at this point you're kind of focusing on yourself, not in the sense that you're not paying attention to the Cavs, but you're focusing on just handling your business because if you handle your business, you're going to be in a good spot come postseason. And kind of looking at guys like, as you've mentioned, you're looking at teams like the Cavs, you're looking at Brooklyn, you're looking at Miami, obviously because they're all kind of bunched up a little bit. But I feel pretty good about this team right now, so I couldn't agree more. And kind of highlighting someone that I think is kind of primed to have a pretty big West Coast trip. I've seen the signs, man. I think the way RJ's been playing lately is definitely better than the style of basketball he's playing previous. Now, yesterday obviously he took a bunch of shots, and that's because Jalen Brunson was out, so he had to be the secondary scoring option for Julius Randle. And Emmanuel quickly decided, he was going to go off as well. So they had three guys with really big scoring nights. But kind of looking at, his I know box score plus minus isn't everything, but it's a metric he hasn't performed well in this year, and he's been in the positive since the All-Star break. He's shooting 40% from three since that point, 47% from the field. He's taking fewer shot attempts. I think he's kind of realizing, he can't, not that he can't, but he can't try to force himself into this offense. He can't try to, be in the starting lineup and force himself into taking shots that, quite frankly, shouldn't be taking, right? You don't need to take 8 shots in the first quarter because you're scared that you're not going to get the ball in the second half, right? It's something where I think he's kind of just letting the game come to him. If he scores 16 on one night, it is what it is. That's fine. If he plays strong defense, if that 16 points he got, he didn't have to take too many shots to get to those 16, it's a good night. Again, it's something where he has the talent to just let the game come to him and play good basketball and play a good brand of basketball. This Knicks team has adopted a very strong style of basketball, very sustainable, successful form of basketball. And if RJ is able to kind of seamlessly transition into that new role for him, he's going to be a big contributor, a big component to this team's success. This team's in the large, for the most part, this team's performed so well in spite of RJ's inconsistencies, in spite of, it feels like he may be pressing a little bit, right? We see this across any sport, really. When guys press, things go south. But when he looks confident, when he's kind of just buying into this system, I feel like that lack of, I don't know how to put it, that lack of confidence that you're going to get the ball in the second half kind of evaporates. This guy's been a good fourth quarter performer for the Knicks as of late, right? I think he's just got to trust his game and trust that the game will come to him and he'll get his points, he'll get his touches, he'll get his production. What are you seeing from RJ Barrett lately that can indicate maybe a strong West Coast trip? Maybe, he kind of has his signature moment over this West Coast trip. What are you seeing from RJ Barrett since the All-Star break?
Right. So I'm seeing more confidence out of RJ for sure. Before he was taking a lot of shots. He didn't seem confident in his shots. Whatever it was, it didn't feel right when he would take a bunch of threes. It didn't seem like he was really getting in a rhythm. It seemed like he was kind of forcing himself to get in a rhythm. Now he's kind of just letting the game flow with him. And I think I think we saw that against Boston. He had a great first quarter against Boston. He had 14 points. He was 5 of 8, so he not only was efficient, but he was getting to the bucket. He was scoring. I know that game's a little bit of an anomaly because Brunson was out, so it might not be the same when Brunson's back in. But regardless, I think that's encouraging to see without a doubt because, like you've mentioned, RJ's had his inconsistencies. We're still winning despite that, but, you don't want it to continue into the playoffs. You don't want it to overlap in the playoffs because in the playoffs, we're going to need him a bit because, the game plan for opposing teams is going to be to stop Brunson and Randle. Those are the 2 guys that we've depended on all year, and those are the guys that you would think we would depend on in the playoffs. So you got to have Barrett and Quickly and guys like that be ready to step up when tasked to do so. And I think what we're seeing from Barrett lately is encouraging of that. I'm hoping he can continue that into the West Coast trip. I think his game against Boston was a confidence boost for him because, Boston's is obviously not a tough out at all. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they have great defenders all around. Marcus Smart, Derek White, they got great defenders. They're pretty much great in every aspect almost. There's a reason why Boston's second in the East currently. So seeing that though, seeing how well RJ performed against that was definitely encouraging. We saw it last year. He hit the buzzer beater against Tatum and then he just took off. He had the best stretch of his career. It looked like he was going to become the guy going forward. Obviously he took a step back this season, but I'm hoping the big game against Boston gives him a confidence boost. Okay, I could still be an impactful player and a winning player at that. And, ever since the All-Star break, his defense has tightened up too. So that's a huge thing because his defense was, giving him a bit of trouble prior to the All-Star break. I think a lot of us know that more than anybody else. But, seeing the improvement on both sides of the ball is a huge thing. And I'm hoping he continues that into the West Coast because, our first opponent in the West Coast, Sacramento, like I mentioned, they're an offensive juggernaut. So we got to hope that, one, Barrett can contain some of those guys, but I know they're tough to contain. So he's got to be able to match them on the offensive side. And if he's able to do that to a degree, then we're in great position to not only have a good West Coast trip, but to finish out strong. And if he can continue playing strong down this final stretch and into the playoffs, we could have a great playoffs from RJ, which I'm really hoping for because it'll not only make us a deeper team, but I think the difference with RJ, we mentioned it last episode. You said he's like our X factor, and I couldn't agree more. He's, you know, he makes the difference between this team being a really good team to a great team. Because if he's playing at his best, we're looking at a great team. Because then you have a legitimate big three. Already we have a great trio, but then you're looking at like a legit big three if he's playing at his best level. Because then you'd have three 20-point per game scores that are consistent and Barrett's good on both ends, so you have that guy that can do pretty much everything at the wing, which is big. I think that he makes the big difference right there. So if he's playing at his best in the playoffs, we look really good because then we look like a tough matchup because then you have to worry about three guys. Now you have to worry not only just about Brunson and Randall, but now you got to worry about Barrett because if Barrett heats up, then Barrett will go crazy. So you got that. That's my point right there. I think he's a big difference maker. So if he can continue playing as like he did against Boston, then we're in great position. And I'm hoping he continues that as we go out west.
Yeah, dude. I think you've hit every point on. I think today you're shooting 100 from the free throw line, man. Or I guess from three. Free throw line would mean like those are kind of easier shots. Let's say from three. Those you got a couple of step back contested 3-point shots in there too. But in all seriousness, like I couldn't. I just man, I'm running out of words to be like impressed with this team. I'm really like, what else am I supposed to really say? Like, oh yeah, this team is kind of good. I think we just
They
beat.
shock us every night, really. I mean,
Yeah,
every night they raise our expectation because we think we set the bar kind of high, and then they just outlast it, and then we're just like, well, now what do we do? Because I
yeah.
mean, like we were anticipating dropping the Boston game. I mean, Boston's a tough out. That's not like us being pessimistic. That's just Boston's a tough team. You got to be realistic at some
And no
point and
Jalen
realize
Brunson.
like, yeah, no Jalen Brunson too, and you got to realize like Boston's a great team. So it's like you take that into account. And you're like, okay, realistically, they might not win that game. It's just that's sports. They're a better team. I think we all know that. But they've beaten them. They beat them 3 out of 4 times this year, Boston. And we were saying a good like 2-2 or 3-1 week would be a successful week, and they went 4-0. That like completely outdid our expectations. It shocks us. I mean, watching these games and seeing what they're doing, it's just like our jaws are on the floor because I
Yeah,
mean we we really don't know what to say. We're running out of things to talk about. I mean, ever since you and I started doing these podcasts, we have yet to lose. It's superstitious, I know, but we have yet to lose. We keep that going. And I mean, just like everything that we've seen so far is so impressive. I mean, we get more and more impressed with this team each game in and game out. I mean, seeing quickly drop nearly a 40-point triple double national TV against Boston. I mean, that was like the icing on the cake. That was like, wow, this team really is deep. We thought this team was deep before, but seeing him do that in a spot start, just able to just come right in and do that, like, I mean, we run out of words here. Like, really, we do. Like, it's just like, what more can we expect? What more can we say? Like, we can't really we can't really have that pessimistic mindset anymore like we used to in previous years. We got to like realize like we can hold our own against anybody, and that's what I'm feeling like. Like now I'm feeling confident. Like I feel confident. Obviously I feel confident against Charlotte. They're a significantly weaker opponent, but like going into West Coast, I'm confident. I'm confident they can make a good game out of Sacramento. Even if they were to drop that game, I'm confident they can make it competitive all 4 quarters, all 48 minutes. Like I love what this team's doing right now. It's really impressed me. It's really impressed a lot of us. I mean, I'm sure Knicks fans are thinking the same thing right now. And just everything about the Knicks is good vibes. Like as it's all been saying, it's immaculate right now. The vibes are immaculate. Everything is just phenomenal, and I love what we're seeing. It's so impressive. I couldn't be any more happy right now.
yeah, dude. The way I'm gonna describe it, and I've used this for baseball. And if Nick is listening to this, Nick, you know what I'm about to say. The boys are bopping right now, right? The boys are bopping right now. This team is on. This team is just playing at such a high level. And this team is continuing to impress. Again, they've won in multiple different ways. They win big. They win games that they're dogfights, like playoffs atmospheres. It's like Miami and Boston. Those games on the road, man. Those are playoff atmospheres. This team stepped up, and as you mentioned, they broke their hearts. They broke. The Celtics have been free falling since they met us. I mean, they haven't looked the same since, right? But in all seriousness, this team, as you said, there's not really much more I can add that you said, but Ultimately, I hope you guys are just as excited as we are about this team. I hope you guys are enjoying this run just as much as we are. We are all over the place with content for you guys. We got you guys with podcasts. We've got you guys with highlights. We got you guys with the Twitter. All of the links for all of our socials are in the description. We've got graphics, stats, anything you guys could possibly need about your New York Knicks. We've got it, right? We are a one-stop shop for New York Knicks content. We love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for the support. Dylan, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add on before we dip.
No, I just quickly wrap it up. It's very exciting what this team's doing. So if you want to keep looking at some cool Knicks news or Knicks highlights, just come follow us. We're on Twitter. Follow Fireside Knicks on Twitter. I think we're on TikTok now as well, and we're on YouTube obviously with these podcasts. So just keep giving the support. And I mean, yeah, let's just hope for a great West Coast trip and let's keep it rolling. Simple as that.
Yep, and we've got our Twitters above us, so you guys can make sure you guys can follow us there as well and kind of track our Knicks tweets and all that stuff. But I'm Ryan Garcia. That's Dylan Backer. I pointed the complete wrong direction. That's Dylan Backer. It's all inverse. And we'll see you guys in the next Fireside Knicks episode.